afternoon. Thank you so much for coming by to learn. It's a privilege to be with you, and wish you all a good day, a good week. We're cold. All right, so let's go back. Let's go back to the Mishnah. We were dealing with the second half of the Mishnah. Remember that the Ansik Nesach, right? And what they had to say. So first of all, last time David asked the question, at what stages does the Canaan stop and become the Nevi'im? And the answer to Forshim says exactly when the Canaan died and the Nevi'im started. So they may not have realized exactly when there was by a day, but that was exactly when the period started. So after the Canaan came to a close, and we mentioned them last week, who some of the word, came the period of the Nevi'im, starting with Shmuel's Eliah Cohen, etc. All right, and then now we have the Ansik Nesach, and as we mentioned again and again, until the Ansik Nesach, there was a total transmission. The only area where there was not a total transmission was Hashem to Moshe. That was impossible. That was two different types of existences. A divine Shalom that was totally spiritual and eternal, and the person who had a physical body. There's no communication that can be equal to those two. But aside from that, Yeshua, Zekanim, Nevi'im gave over all the Torah they had. So it was a perfect transmission, and what they told them was many things, obviously. You don't even know what they told them, because nothing is spelled out. When it came to the Ansik Nesach, as we said, everything slowed down. The period of the first Beis Hamikdash came to an end, and hence it was the end of Nevuah. And the Nevuah, so we're missing a major part of our Masorah. In other words, no longer could we turn to Nevi'im to tell us Dvar Hashem. And now you got to work it out yourself. Now you have to work it out within the frailties of the human system. So the Ansik Nesach had to deal with a new system and a new challenge. Because as we said the other day, they're the ones who gave us the structure to take Judaism into the Golah. For thousands of years we lived in Golas. We didn't have a home, an address. We didn't have a Yerushalayim. We didn't have a Beit HaMikdash. And we had to survive. And the wherewithal of survival came from the Ansik Nesach. So they gave us the wherewithal that we're still living from this day over here. And they said Shlosh Adorim. They said three things. Why they said three things and not other things, we don't know. Maybe we could find out. But anyhow, they said three things. And what are the three things they said? As you have it in front of you there, they said, be deliberate in judgment. Be deliberate in judgment. So right away you got a problem here. When the Masorah of the Mishnah is talking about the whole Jewish people, and now all of a sudden you're making it into a rabbinic thing. Now you're talking to Dayanim. You're not talking to everybody. Who's that referring to? Be deliberate in making a judgment. Who makes judgments? Okay. So what does that mean? Misunim Badim. And in the last year we spent a bit of time on that to discuss exactly what that means with the broader ramifications. And of course, one of the basic things is that in a certain sense we're all judges. We shouldn't be. It says, "Al todnos chavecha," don't judge another person unless you're in his shoes. We don't always listen to that. We're judges, and if we're not judges on judging other people, which is a problem, we're judging ourselves. We're making decisions for ourselves where we really don't know where we're going. And that's the type of din too. The type of decisions that people make when they're young. Beryl Wine writes, it says, the falling in love and getting married when you're young produces as many problem marriages, if not more, than good marriages. Why? Because you're not misunim badin. We're young, we're hasty, we're making decisions, we're not being deliberate. And it's all about being deliberate. Deliberate is what it's all about. So we went through a number of things where we dealt with what is called deliberate. what is called deliberate and what the Torah wanted. The Torah wanted a person should examine things carefully. In other words, don't take bribes. We take bribes. We always take bribes. What are bribes? What we want to do. What we feel like doing. So at the end of the day, that becomes part of the process, but that's a bribe. In other words, whenever you're not using clarity of mind and of thought, you are a judge who's not being Muslim Din. And not being Muslim Din can create 1,000 problems. I wanted to share with you. I actually wanted to share with you in terms of a personal reference. There was a big Rosh Yeshiva in America. Actually, he died in 1979. His name was Rabbi Gedalia Shaw. Rabbi Gedalia Shaw was born in Poland. He was born in Poland in 1910. Died in Brooklyn, in Williamsburg, or Borough Park, in 1979. He was a great Talmid Chacham. He wrote Sforim called Or Gedalia, still studied to this day. He was a Rosh Yeshiva in Yeshiva Harav, and furthermore, though he was born in Poland, as I said, he studied at Yeshiva Harav. He obviously came as a very young child, and he was a student of Harav. So Rabbi Gedalia Shaw, Baron Kotler, who came after the war and was one of the giants who brought Torah to America, said about Gedalia Shaw, this is the first American Gadol. The first American Gadol we have on these shores is Gedalia Shaw, born in Poland. And he was a rather young man when he passed away. I have a personal reminiscence of Gedalia Shaw. Number one, his brother Aaron was the Balkori at the Minyan. My father davened in Williamsburg for 20 years, etc. So we knew him very, very well. But Rabbi Ziedy was a Gaon, a Talmid Chacham, and a very tall, statuesque, handsome man. And every day that I went to the primary school of Torah Das, every morning, and I lived around 2-3 blocks away, so it was a short walk. When on the street, I met Rabbi Gedalia Shaw, always coming back, always with a smile, always shook his head to you warmly, and that was the Gadol. And he died suddenly. He died of a heart attack on Sheva Brachos. And now, so Rabbi Gedalia Shaw has a son, Avraham Shaw, a giant like his father. Not a Rosh Yeshiva, but a man with a great following in Brooklyn to this day. And he wrote a sefer. He wrote a sefer called Halekach V'Levuv. And when I gave the Pirkei Avos years ago, I remember finding the sefer. I bought it, and let me show you a few words that he says. The question is the obvious question. We just raised it. Except Avos is talking about the laws of the Eretz, right? Laws of the Eretz. What are laws of the Eretz? Everybody needs that. Every human being knows the laws of the Eretz. And yet, when it comes to the answer, what do they say? Masunim Adim. That's not the laws of the Eretz for everybody. Now you're talking to Dayanim, right? So what does that mean? So Avraham Halevi, the Elohim, Shaw said as follows: no, we're always making decisions. We are acting as judges in life. We may not realize it, but 1,000 times a day we're making decisions. Good ones, bad ones, great ones, terrible ones. We're making decisions. So we are acting as judges in our own lives. And when we're acting as judges in our own life, what is the Mishnah saying? Misunim, take your time. Don't be hasty. Don't judge quickly. If you judge quickly, you're going to make a mistake. You have to make mistakes because everybody said, when a person is hasty, when a person is under pressure, when a person feels he has to decide now, he's going to make the wrong decision. I always maintained, and I used to speak to Talmidim, that the Gedolei Yisrael, the people we call giants, and there aren't many giants. Every generation might be lucky to have 1 or 2 giants that most of the Jewish world embraces. Right? These giants, something about them. Number one, they live long. People like Rav Shach live to be well over 100. Rav Steinman, just take the list. First of all, a person can't be recognized as a Godlum unless he is 70, 80, 90 plus, because that's a godlum. And so God, you don't live long. Why do they live long? Why do they have better genes than anybody else? Because they don't. Why do they live long? Because they don't live in a world of pressure. They don't live in a world that can be pushed into anything. They're very much at home with Hashem, home in their own skin, and therefore this is the way they live. Bisunim badin, they take a decision carefully and slowly, and they don't care what goes on around them. Their reaction has nothing to do with society. They're not looking for popularity, not looking for votes. So they live in a world of no pressure. They live in a world of a total different pressure than you and I know about. And therefore, since we also know that the pressure that we talk about is dangerous, what does the Mishnah say in Pirkei? HaKoved v'Tayv v'Koved. HaKoved v'Chayv. The desire to have honor, the desire to fulfill your desires, etc., etc. Those are the things that give you heart attacks. What gives people heart attacks? You're living in a world where you're under pressure all the time. You need to make decisions. They don't make decisions. They have no need. They make them calmly, and therefore. Okay. So says Rabbi Avraham, sure, that's what we're told over here. Because we're always making decisions under pressure. We're making bad decisions, terrible decisions, etc. Sometimes good decisions. But if there's pressure, it can't be good. If there's pressure, it can't be good because we're being pushed. You remember in the Gemara in Shabbos, we learned it recently in Afshemi, when Hillel refused to get angry, and they called him 3 times. They made bets. How do you get Hillel angry? And they called him back. It was Erev Shabbos, and he was getting dressed. They called him out and they asked him silly questions, etc. And he didn't get angry. He answered calmly, went back to get dressed again. And finally, one guy said to his friends, I'll make a wager of 400 zuz that will get him angry. He called him out for the 3rd time, the 4th time perhaps, and asked him a lame question. And Hillel didn't get angry. Same way he did before, answered quietly and calmly, etc. So when he finished, the questioner said to him, Hillel, you just cost me 400 zuz. You just cost me a bet of 400 zuz. Hillel said, may I cost you much more than 400 zuz, and that Hillel never loses temper. that Hillel never loses temper, and that he will not act in haste. He doesn't act in haste, because that's not what life's about. So you don't live in another world. To live without those pressures. Therefore, as I said, there aren't many of them, but whoever they live long, well over 100, over and over again and again. So there's lots to be said for a world without pressure. And the Ram Shor, in this shiur that he gave here, and he quoted Hillel with the 400 zuz, he said as follows: Al zeis yispal kol chosid, elech leis mitzay. A chosid is a posuk in Tilim, Lamed Beis. A chosid davens to Hashem leis mitzay. What's leis mitzay? For good times, right times. He prays for one thing: life shouldn't become rushing water. He shouldn't be under pressure that he's rushed in a hurry, etc. Pressurized to do something now, make a decision. That's not a tzaddik. A tzaddik doesn't live in that world. Because if that's the world you live in, shetev ma'in ravim. He says, you have to make mistakes. You got to go wrong. Listen to his words again. If somebody's under pressure, he's in a hurry, he's pressurized, he feels not relaxed, he feels he's got to make a decision now, this second, you're in trouble already. You're not thinking. You're not giving it your best shot. You can't give it your best shot. So you are in trouble, and this is, we see this again, etc. That a person davens, etc. for calmness of spirit, calmness of that. It's called Mesuna Badin. Okay. And in Rome Short, the end of the Torah says, Mesunim Badin in Gematria is Ruach HaKodesh. Mesunim Badin in Gematria it spells Ruach HaKodesh, that through Mercedes, by being deliberate, you have Ruach HaKodesh. You have your best shot, your best mind, the best of you is make a decision, etc., etc., and you can't do better than that. All right, so everybody say, so the fact of the matter is, Mesunim Adin is not something for Abonim, it's not for the Yonim, it's all of us. Because we are judging. First of all, we're judging other people, which we shouldn't. It says, you can't judge another person, to use Bear Wine's words, unless you, as a Yiddi used to say, unless you're wearing his moccasins. If you're standing in his moccasins, you can make the judgment. But nobody does that and knows in that position. So therefore, we can't judge other people, and we shouldn't judge other people. But nevertheless, we're doing it to ourselves too. We're doing it to ourselves, and Rabbi Lau over here said, because a lot of the time we're taking bribes. We do what's simple. We do what's easy for us. It's easier, it's popular, whatever it is. Whatever it is, we are encouraged by things that are not part of the real din. Right? So that was Mesunim Badin. Now, I want to take the second thing that Sheknesser talked about, and what do they say? Hemidu Talmidim Harbe. Hemidu Talmidim Harbe. What does that mean? They said, establish a lot of students. Hemidu Harbe. There's a very famous Taisus Yontif who asked, what does it say? Hemidu, what do you mean stand up? Hemidu means to stand. What does it say Hemidu? Why doesn't it say make make many students? Doesn't say that. You know what Hemidu means? It says in Taisus Yontif, Hemidu Isam Araglam, stand up on their feet. You need students who, when they walk away from the Bismedish, and they walk away from their teachers, they remain standing to the same values. They don't fall. They don't fall immediately because they're strong, they're powerful, they're established. They know who they are and where they are. That's the goal. Mitzvah Talmidim Harbe is a mitzvah. Make many students. So what does that mean, make many students? And why make many students? Well, when I used to learn with my friend Mendel Kaplan's a privilege I had, excuse me, for 30 years, over 30 years. I remember the first time in the Mishnah we came across an expression which he had never heard before. And what was the expression? The expression was, there's a concept, there's a certain concept which becomes halakha. What's the concept? Tinok, a baby, a child, Tinok means a very young child, Shenishba, that was captured by Goyim. Tinok Shenishba ben Goyim is a special category. A child that was captured in the 19th century, they were called Cananistim. They used to take children from Jewish homes when they were very, very young, under Bar Mitzvah, and take them away for 25 years. And of course, they had no chance to survive. You couldn't survive as a Jew when you were deprived of your environment, your parents, your teachers for 25 years. So, but nevertheless, this is a Gemara concept. A child that was captured by the Goyim. The Goyim captured a child when he was very young. Hence, it makes sense. He never heard of anything. He never heard of Shabbos. He never heard of kosher. He never heard of anything. So he doesn't know anything. And that's the meaning of that term. I've never explained it to Mendel because he couldn't get it. That, in other words, if you stop to think, what did the Torah imagine? This thing called Besorah, the tradition we have of thousands of years, how did they imagine a Jew should be raised? How did they imagine a Jew should be taught? And if you follow the logical line of thinking, there's a natural succession. Children are raised in homes. Homes teach their children. Their parents send their children to Chaim, to schools as well, to learn some more. But at the same time, the structure is the home. The structure are your parents and your grandparents and the world in which you live. Everyone has a structure. Everyone has a structure, and then depending on what you do with that structure, depends how you develop. So in other words, if we follow this line where they, in other words, that's called Masorah, right? Masorah, parents, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, one Masorah. So there's very little room for Kiruv V'Choikim. Where does this outreach come in? Because there shouldn't be any fallout. If there's a natural succession, where's the fallout? So in other words, the answer would be the simple answer that you can only have fallout when you have trauma. In other words, when Jews migrate from one continent to another, from Europe to America, which would be a great example, it happened not that long ago. When you have that kind of traumatic change, then you have a loss of transition. Loss of transition means you got to start again. I remember the Torah says in Parashat Azinu, it says in Parashat Azinu, it says, Zechoyim Leiselam. You want to know what Judaism is about? Zechoyim Otolam. Know the story of days. In other words, saying it is know your history. Zechoyim Otolam. And then it says more than just know it. Binu, understand. Shnot Dor Dor, the changes of every generation. Understand what happens in history. Know your history, understand it well. All right. So the poster goes on to say, so how do you find out? How do you find out where you come from? What's all about? So this is the poster in the Torah. It says, Shal Avicha V'Yagetcha. Ask your father. Ask your parents. They will teach you. That's the way it worked. So it was home built. Etc. Your homework was for you. And then the poster went on to say something quite shocking. It says, Shal Avicha V'Yagetcha. Ask your parents. And then it says, after Shal Avicha, it says, Zikeinecho, Yom ask your teachers and they will tell you. That's what it's all about. And so I remember saying this years ago, and I heard it decades ago. In other words, there may come a time, and we've seen such times, when parents could not tell their kids what to do, because nobody told them. Nobody told the parents they're going to tell their kids. So then the poster goes on, you know what happens? Zikeinecho. Then you need your schools. Then you need the teachers. Go and ask them, and they will tell you. And that's the way you want to call it. You have a picture. Now take that picture a step further. So if every generation is being taught by the generation before them, how do you find the Jew who doesn't know? How can you find the ignorant Jew? And the answer is that if Chazal were looking for a way to describe how do you find the Jew who doesn't know what Judaism is about, you got to find a child who was captured by God when he was a baby and never had the experience. So that could only be a minority of people. It could be a very small minority of people. But that's what the concept called Tinuk Shenishva Hinachum. Now, if you take that into a contemporary sense, it's very interesting that the Chavetz Chaim, the great tzaddik, the Chavetz Chaim, who, as you know, was still is the teacher of Klal Yisrael. Even today, even though he passed away in 1933, the Chavetz Chaim tried to understand the Jews in America. Jews in America had made a trip across the ocean, and it was lost. The tradition was lost. It got lost between Poland and New York, etc., and you had to put it together. And it wasn't easy. And much of it is still lost. Much of that is still lost to this day, will probably never be put together. But the Chavetz Chaim understood. He said he understands the position of those Jews who came to America. Yes, they were from at home. Yes, they came from religious homes. Yes, they knew what it was all about. But they were not ready to face America. They weren't ready to find themselves as immigrants in a country where they didn't know the language. They brought no money with them. They had no education, and they had children to support. There was no way they could deal with that. And so therefore, so many of them didn't keep Shabbos. So very many, as a matter of fact. So the Chavetz Chaim said that he is convinced that in heaven, those people will be considered not more guilty than shogeg, unintentional sinners, because the pressures they face are so big. And the Chazoni said the same thing. Chazoni said today, Jews who don't know the values of what they are foregoing, etc., are not Mechal Shabbos on purpose, They just don't know. They don't know, and therefore Hashem will have another judgment of them. That's Tinuk Shenish Beinachim. But in the days of the Chazal, how do you find such a thing? All right. So let's come back. So in other words, what are we saying now? We are saying that the Chazal had an idea where every Jew was learned. They weren't told, not all were Gedolim, they weren't told from their Chum, they couldn't all pass Shalos, but they could ask reasonable, intelligent questions. They could challenge the rabbi. In other words, every rabbi could be questioned by any one of the people he knew, young and old, etc., and asked to explain what he's saying, what he's teaching. And it was a challenge. So he says, different generation. In a generation where everyone is learned to a degree, and everyone has something going for him. And unless he has real reason to be a rebel, which only Hashem will know that, of course it may be that. And there are people like that too. Unless he has a real reason to be a rebel, there's no reason to be a rebel, etc. So in the absence of a reason to be a rebel, we expect every Jew has an understanding of study, a love of study, which comes natural with love of home, love of parents, and so on. And so the Mishnah came along and said, you know what? You got to teach as many Jews as you can. You got to teach as many Jews as you can. In other words, the more the better. No breaks, okay? So I want to quote to you from Samson Paul Hirsch's work on the Mishnah. This is what he says. You know, we are told, everyone knows it, we are told Torah Tzivul Moshe, we are told the Torah Moshe, my Rosh Yeshiva Yaakov. It is the common possession of the entire community. That's how he translates. My Rosh, it is an inheritance, Kehelas Yaakov, to all Jews of all the communities. And therefore, the maximum dissemination of knowledge of the Torah is our supreme task, our sacred concern. In other words, teaching as many possible people as possible. And then he added these words. Remember when Yeshua came and told Moshe, Eldad Meidad Misnachnim B'Machane. Eldad and Meidim are prophesizing Ruach HaKodesh in the camp. And he said, Climb, let's get rid of him. And what did Moshe say? Umi Yitain. All of God's people will be scholars. But they were being threatened by people asking questions. That's what her said. That's not that's a statement of belief. Halavai mi yitain kol Hashem leviim. Halavai, the entire people will be leviim. That's the goal. Make them all leviim. They will overcome the leviim. But that's your aim. The more you teach, the more people know, the less they'll drop out. The less dropouts there are, and therefore you're closer to the goal. And because there are less dropouts there are, rabbis have to explain what they're saying. No rabbi can get away without being questioned. That's healthy. It's all healthy for Judaism when Jews ask intelligent questions and don't accept anything for an answer. Nothing live at all. Now, you know, there was the Gemara in Baruch is a very famous Gemara. You heard of that as well. The Gemara in Baruch says that there was a difference between the school of Hillel and the school of Shammai, and who should be allowed to come to the Beis Medrash. The school of Shammai said only people who are Terche Kebarer, only certain elite students should be entitled to join the Beis Medrash, the Yeshiva Gedel, the real Beis Medrash of the day. And Hillel said no. And then you had Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah who came along, and after Rabbi Gamliel, what did Rabbi Gamliel say? That was Shammai. Rabbi Gamliel said, Terche Kebarer, only students of a certain level can enter the Beis Medrash, others cannot, and etc. And then when he gave up the job and Elazar ben Azariah was appointed, he said everybody can come. Everybody can come. Suddenly 700 benches were added in one day. And Rabbi Gamliel was upset that he deprived so many people of Torah, and the answer was no. The answer was both had a point. And Rabbi Lar quotes sources in his sefer here that Beit Shammai believed it was the quality of Torah that counted, not the quantity. Beis Hillel said no, quantity is a quality as well. The Chazon Ish said the only way you reach the quantity is by the quality. It's individuals who set the standards. You can't expect the whole world to set a standard. Individuals set standards and the world follows. So it's the quantity follows the quality. And they said, no, there's a quality in quantity. The entire children of Hashem should be Nevi'im. And so that's what they were saying. That's what they stood for. They stood for the more Talmidim you have, the more you set up, the more people can stand on their own legs, the more scholars we're going to have. And the stronger Klal will be, stronger the Torah will be, stronger the Jewish world will be. All right, we'll leave it over here now. And there's one more part over here, which we'll finish next week, which is the third point which they made. What was that? Asyu Siyog the Torah, make a fence around the Torah. We will deal with that, please God, next week. And thank you all for listening. I hope I didn't bore you. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
It was absolutely outstanding. Very clear and outstanding. Thank you.